Today we're diving into a packed lineup of news, and it's all pretty huge. Let's kick it off with PlayStation Plus's November game catalog. Big titles like Grand Theft Auto 5, Dying Light 2, and Like a Dragon Ishin are coming to subscribers. Meanwhile, PS5 Pro owners in the UK might be happy to hear about an early price cut, with one major retailer already slashing the price tag. Plus, PS5's exclusive Stellar Blade is breaking out of the exclusivity zone and heading to PC. And on the PC side, Microsoft, fresh off a round of major layoffs, is eyeing more big acquisitions. Then we've got Xbox boss Phil Spencer, throwing shade at pricey consoles, subtly casting the PS5 Pro in a dimmer light. And in gaming trends, RPG fans in the UK are going all in on Dragon Age: The Veilguard, with sales competing head-to-head with heavy hitters like Dragon's Dogma 2 and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Also, I've worked out a theory on how GTA 6 might be able to run at 60 frames per second on PS5 Pro, though I'm still worried about the base PS5 and Xbox Series X versions. And yes, we will discuss the CPU bottleneck situation. But before we get into that, here's the question of the day. With PS5 Pro now out, with its controversial price tag and the lack of the included disk drive, do you think the PlayStation 6 will cost $700 and will come without a disk drive? Let's talk about it. Here are the biggest gaming leaks and news you've probably missed this week. Am I the only one who thought the DSS will be a cool place where Helldivers will get to hang out and see cool stuff? Like, I literally thought it will be a big hub. So what is the DSS? Okay, so it seems like people on the Helldivers subreddit are talking about the DSS, which stands for the Democracy Space Station. It's a new feature in Helldivers 2, and it seems like it's causing some mixed reactions. From what I gather, the DSS is this giant space station that you can use to help you in missions. You can donate resources to it, and then it can do things like provide airstrikes or orbital bombardments. It's supposed to be a powerful tool for spreading democracy, or something like that. But it sounds like some players aren't thrilled with it. The original post that got deleted was saying that the DSS isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it highlights some problems with the game. Unfortunately, since the post was deleted, we don't know exactly what those problems are. Have you heard about the PlayStation State of Play in December? Well, I'm here to disappoint you. The date that Sony appeared to tease in its ad was December 3rd, 2024, just days ahead of the Game Awards. Journalist and insider Jeff Grubb took to Twitter to dash hopes, noting that he hasn't heard any rumblings of a PlayStation event next month. Grubb is typically spot on when it comes to leaking PlayStation events. On an episode of Game Mess Mornings, he doubled down on this, telling fans that his sources were positive that there's nothing planned for December. To be clear, this doesn't mean that Sony doesn't have anything planned to celebrate PlayStation's 30th anniversary. What Grubb's saying here is to temper expectations for some kind of a showcase. We've also noticed that other insiders, who usually corroborate reports of PlayStation events, have been quiet on this front, indicating that Sony wasn't really teasing anything. Kind of a bummer, I know. So Microsoft is finally planning on an Xbox handheld, which honestly, everyone kind of suspected anyway. Phil Spencer basically confirmed in an interview that yeah, they're working on something portable, but it's going to be a while, like years out. Right now, they're still messing around with prototypes, figuring out what the market actually wants. He didn't get into too many specifics, but the idea seems to be they want something that fits into the current gaming landscape, but also does its own thing. They don't want to rush it out just to compete. They want to make sure it really stands out. For the time being, though, their focus is more on improving the Xbox app to work better with handhelds that already exist. So like supporting devices that people are already using to stream Xbox games. Spencer even said he loves the idea of Microsoft making its own devices, but they're trying to learn from what's already out there so they can do something unique when the time comes. He's hinted at this before though, like back in June when he said the team's looking at new form factors for Xbox. And he actually emphasized that playing games locally on a handheld is key, so it's not going to be just cloud-based. They want you to actually download games and play. Plus, there was that big leak last year that spilled some possible Xbox hardware plans. Spencer later said those leaks were outdated, but it still lined up with all the hints we're seeing now. Just after a major round of layoffs, over 2,500 jobs gone following the huge $69 billion buyout of Activision Blizzard, it seems like they're already looking to spend on more acquisitions. Talk about moving fast, right? Phil Spencer recently spoke with Bloomberg and said, "The Xbox business has never been more healthy." He's all about expanding Xbox beyond just consoles into a more versatile gaming platform. This could even mean pushing into mobile gaming or maybe a handheld device in the future. Spencer also mentioned something interesting. He wants more geographic diversity in Microsoft's acquisitions, aiming to buy companies that will help them compete in the mobile and handheld space. But he insists there's nothing about to happen right this second, though we've all heard that one before. Now, it's a typical corporate move, right? The company is laying off thousands of employees, but at the same time getting excited about new, big purchases. And while Spencer has some ambitious ideas, like growing mobile, cloud gaming, and even putting more Xbox exclusives on PlayStation, it's hard not to think about the timing. Imagine how this all looks to the people who just lost their jobs there. Microsoft seems set on expanding Xbox beyond just consoles, but with so many cutbacks, it raises questions. Can they make this big transition while maintaining stability for their employees? But the interesting bit was when he said, "We're not going to grow the market with 1,000 consoles." It's hard not to see that as a little dig at the recent PS5 Pro release, which was pretty pricey and mostly aimed at die-hard enthusiasts willing to pay for the extra features. Spencer's been saying Xbox is healthier than ever these days, pointing to growth in things like cloud gaming, PC gaming, and overall console usage. That's interesting, especially given all the layoffs and studio shutdowns they've had this year, but he seems optimistic about where the industry is headed, saying the way to reach new players is through new business models, new devices, new ways of access. Basically, not by making the consoles themselves more expensive. As for the future of Xbox, he hinted again at potential new acquisitions, with an eye on mobile or on companies in other regions, that geographic diversity bit. And he even left things open-ended on whether future Xbox exclusives, like maybe even the next Halo, could end up on other platforms. He says there's no strict rule saying, "thou must not." It almost seems like Xbox is moving more toward being everywhere, instead of just a one-console brand. Do you think Phil's comment on 1,000 consoles was a dig at PlayStation? Or is he genuinely just talking strategy? So, you know that action RPG Stellar Blade? It's been one of Sony's big hits for the PS5 this year, especially for an exclusive. It came out in the spring, and apparently its sales are still pretty solid, even though that initial hype has calmed down a bit. But here's the interesting part. The developers, Shift Up, just announced they're working on a PC version, set to drop sometime next year. They're clearly optimistic about it too. In a recent earnings report, Shift Up talked about how platforms like Steam have become huge. They even referenced Black Myth, which broke records for concurrent players on Steam this August. They're hoping Stellar Blade could ride a similar wave on PC and possibly even outperform its PS5 sales. I mean, it's kind of a smart move, right? PC can open it up to way more players globally. Marvel's game lineup is looking pretty stacked right now. They've got Marvel Rivals coming out soon on December 6th, Marvel 1943, Rise of Hydra expected next year, and then a bunch of other projects in development with no set release dates yet, like Iron Man and Black Panther from EA, Wolverine from Insomniac, and Blade from Arcane. With Wolverine announced way back in 2021, it's possible it might be the first of these games to come out, which could be a useful case study for Blade, especially when it comes to handling their signature healing abilities. So, the thing about Wolverine and Blade in the comics is they both have healing factors, but they work a little differently. Wolverine's healing factor is practically legendary. It lets him bounce back from gunshots, burns, and even near-fatal injuries pretty fast. There are some wild examples in the comics where he's survived everything from nuclear blasts to vampirism. On the other hand, Blade's healing factor is less intense, partly because he doesn't drink human blood, relying instead on a serum. This lets him heal up from minor wounds, but if he takes something seriously fatal, he actually needs human blood to recover. If Arcane is looking to stay true to the comics in Blade, they'll have to walk a fine line to make Blade's regeneration feel impactful, yet balanced. Healing mechanics in games are tricky because they need to be strong enough to feel satisfying, but not so overpowered that they kill any sense of challenge. Wolverine games in the past have experimented with this in different ways. X2 Wolverine's Revenge had players only heal when his claws were retracted, making combat riskier. And X-Men Origins, Wolverine offered a mix of passive regeneration outside combat plus health orbs from enemies, even adding 2 health bars to encourage strategic play, similar to Halo's shield system. When Wolverine finally drops, Arcane could look at how Insomniac balances Wolverine's healing to see what might work well for Blade's own healing factor. That could be especially helpful since Blade is likely going to have a more limited healing ability. The game might need to make Blade's healing factor feel unique, like maybe letting players decide whether to risk relying on the serum or to seek out blood in more dire situations. With Arcane's experience from Deathloop and Dishonored, both of which had intricate gameplay mechanics, it'll be interesting to see how they approach this. How do you think they might balance Blade's abilities to make them feel true to the comics but still challenging? According to Push Square, BioWare's latest RPG, Dragon Age: The Veilguard, has had a solid, if not sensational, launch in the UK, performing at a similar level to other recent RPG titles like Dragon's Dogma 2 and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. While there's been no major fanfare from EA regarding its sales numbers, Games Industry Biz's Christopher Dring highlighted that the real question is whether The Veilguard has met EA's own internal expectations. At over 3 million copies sold, 2.5 million in the first week, Dragon's Dogma 2 is considered a major success for Capcom, whereas Final Fantasy XVI and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth were deemed to have failed to meet expectations by Square Enix, despite impressive early sales. Ultimately, The Veilguard might be seeing success by BioWare's standards, but fall short of setting any records. If sales were over 1 million, EA would have said so, but we'll just have to wait and see. So, it's the 10th anniversary of the Game Awards, which is basically like the Oscars for video games at this point. Jeff Keighley has really pushed the event into the spotlight over the years, though honestly, some people still see it as more of a trailer showcase than an awards ceremony. That might be changing, though, especially with a more diverse voting body made up of international games media, so there's a broader consensus on the winners. And then there's Game of the Year, the main prize, where certain patterns have emerged over time about what the voters go for. The frontrunners for 2024 are pretty clear now. Astro Bot and Metaphor ReFantazio are leading the pack, but there are a bunch of other contenders like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and the Silent Hill 2 remake. That could make things interesting. Then you've got dark horses like Dragon's Dogma 2 and Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth, but those are still more of a long shot. It's funny though, for an awards show, there's always that question of whether the right games actually get their due, or if it's more of a popularity contest influenced by brand names and big publishers. And since the whole field can shift right up to the voting deadline, the last few game releases can still make a big impact. So what do you think? Are the Game Awards actually recognizing the best games each year? Or is it more about what's trending and popular? The PlayStation 5 Pro is capable of delivering impressive 8K resolution gameplay in No Man's Sky, so much so that the game's 8K mode could begin to change minds about the viability of such a high resolution. The tech experts at Digital Foundry took an in-depth look at the PlayStation 5 Pro patch of the popular game developed by Hello Games, highlighting how the game's 8K mode delivers extremely sharp visuals thanks to PSSR, which upscales the game from a base resolution of around 2700p to 8K. The image quality remains impressive even in motion, proving once again how high base resolutions deliver much better upscaling results. Looking at performance, unlike what the in-game menus suggest, frame rate is always capped at a properly paced 30 FPS in 8K mode, which makes the game absolutely playable in this mode. In addition, No Man's Sky seems to be the perfect showcase for an 8K resolution mode, as the game's high contrast and highly stylized visuals with long vistas suit such a high resolution incredibly well. Alright, let's talk about Sony, PSN dramas, and how I think GTA 6 will run at 60 frames per second on PS5 Pro. One commenter said, "I don't think Sony or Arrowhead cares about those tactics anymore. Arrowhead will focus on their game, and Sony will do its own thing. If Arrowhead can now focus on their game after the recent buffs, they should be rolling out content." The people pushing the Sony hate narrative tend to dislike Sony because they're protective of their exclusivity rights. Piracy advocates also seem frustrated by Sony's approach, as it makes it harder for them to sell cheats or exploit the system for profit. The real greed often lies with those advocating for piracy. Alright, here's my take. Sony did care enough to backtrack with Helldivers 2 on PSN when things got out of control, likely because Arrowhead was at their breaking point and may have even threatened legal action to protect their reputation. But Sony is ensuring that every game they release now has a PSN requirement from the start, and they aren't backtracking on that. They're fine with any potential boycotts. It's funny to see people online saying, "Oh, Sony's going to lose money like this." I'm like, no, they won't. Sony releases exclusives on other platforms 1 to 2 years later, just to get a bit of extra revenue. And it's smart. They tend to release these games on PC right before the sequels drop as PS5 exclusives, which works in their favor. I know people who say, "I'm not waiting for God of War, Ragnarok, or Spider-Man 2 to come to PC. I'm getting a PS5 now." My brother has a 4090 GPU, and he still bought a PS5 just for Ragnarok, Spider-Man 2, and Stellar Blade. People are going to buy a PS5 or PS5 Pro to play Ghost of Yoti and GTA 6, while the haters keep boycotting in Steam forums. Alright, so here's the thing, guys. GTA 6. I never thought I'd be talking so much about this game, but I keep hearing pushback about the 30 FPS issue. It feels like I'm one of the only people on YouTube really pushing for 60 frames per second, especially on the PS5 Pro. Here's why I believe it's possible. 1. The $2 billion budget. Rockstar has a huge budget for this, so you'd expect top-tier performance. 2. The rumored exclusive marketing deal with Sony. Now, this hasn't been confirmed yet, but people like Jeff Grubb and Insider Gaming, who have great track records, almost as good as mine, are talking about it. 3. The 10-year development cycle. That's a long time to optimize and push the tech forward. These factors are massive, and Rockstar knows that the era of 30 FPS console gaming is done. Saying GTA 6 would be limited to 30 frames per second on consoles, because past GTA games were all sub-HD or sub-720p, is like saying GTA 6 itself would be 720p. Times have changed. Thanks to Sony's new PSSR tech, I think it's totally feasible for GTA 6 to run at 60 FPS. They'll likely push it down to an 860p internal resolution and then upscale it to 4K with PSSR, which is amazing when you think about it. Digital Foundry's analysis of Stellar Blade using PSSR tech blew my mind.
Only the balanced mode was okay, but even that was somewhat noisy. So for the PS5 Pro patch, they've actually added 2 modes. One of them I think is very strange. The other one is amazing. So the amazing one uses PSSR instead of the prior TAA solution. PSSR though, my goodness, it completely changes the image. It just resolves so much more detail and cleans up so much noise, and it winds up massively improving the visuals overall, I would say. In what was a somewhat dirty looking game at times, it makes it look super smooth and clean, and it is a gigantically, probably the best implementation I've seen yet, just in terms of improving overall image quality maybe, and stability. Stability is key. It's temporally stable now, whereas before it was not. Which is why the Pro Max mode, as they call it, taking one from Apple perhaps, is so strange. That one, with high frame rate mode engaged anyway, limits itself to 50 frames per second.
They said, Stellar Blade's Pro mode using PSSR, running at an 860p internal resolution upscaled to 4K, actually looks better than the Fidelity mode on the base PS5 at native 4K 30 FPS. That's incredible. It just shows how much potential PSSR has, and I think it's underrated right now. So, I'm not even worried about whether GTA 6 will hit 60 frames per second on the PS5 Pro. It probably will. My bigger concern is how it'll handle on the base PS5 and Series X. I really hope they manage to get it to run at 60 FPS on those systems. But if GTA 6 only reaches 60 FPS on the PS5 Pro, that could be a real signal that we're hitting the limits of this generation. In that case, the PS5 Pro might be the only real option for top performance until the PS6 arrives. Oh, and here's another exciting bit. There's talk about GTA 6 Trailer 2 being showcased at the upcoming Game Awards. If that happens, it's going to be incredible to finally get more details about the game. Imagine seeing more of the world, the gameplay, or even a release window. It'd be such a huge moment for fans. Fingers crossed it's true, because the hype for this game is already off the charts, and a second trailer would make the internet explode for real this time. And hopefully we'll finally get some answers from Rockstar about gameplay features, performance, and all the other details we've been dying to know. I'm eager to see how Rockstar plans to push the boundaries this time, whether it's new mechanics, the scale of the world, or even confirmation about performance modes. A second trailer at the Game Awards could be the perfect opportunity to shed some light on all of this.
So that was the video. If you liked it, you can like and subscribe. Anyways, bye. Hit like and subscribe for a cookie. Like and subscribe or I will murder your family. No, I'm just kidding. You know I love you guys. Don't forget to smash that like button. Only a small % of my viewers are actually subscribed to my channel, so I'd appreciate it if you subscribed. Also, it's free. You can change your mind anytime you want. Hey guys, I don't usually do this, even though I say this every video, but if you could like or subscribe to my channel, I'd really appreciate it. I would never mention likes and subscribers except in a mocking way. You know, like, hit like and subscribe. This makes you think I'm not like other YouTubers, even though this attempted subversion is really just another ploy to get you to like and subscribe. This message is being transmitted through brainwaves, forcing you to like and subscribe against your will. Anyways, I spent 100 days in Minecraft and shit got crazy.